So, hello everybody. I believe now is the time for us to start the next part of Fyziklani program. At first, I would like to welcome here our honored guests. We will introduce them to you just in a second. I want to welcome you here as well, you, our participants and your teachers. My name is Dupkala. I graduated from the Faculty of Mathematics and Physics, and maybe I'll try it this way. I graduated from the Faculty of Mathematics and Physics at Charles University, and I am FICO's organizer. I will be hosting this panel discussion, but don't worry, it won't be me who will be talking. Well, why the panel discussion? Science is not just a competition, it is also about the cooperation and sharing some bright ideas. That's why Fyziklani is not just the competition, that's why we have the discussion panel here as well. Tonight's panel will be divided into two parts. In the first part, we will introduce our guests, and we will ask them some questions about their scientific careers, how they got where they are now, how they do their research, and I hope it will be quite interesting for you as potentially new young scientists. In the second part, it will be you who will be asking the questions. You will be able to ask our guests directly. Well, I think from the introduction that's quite enough, so let's go to our guests. Professor Pavel Hobza is a distinguished Czech chemist, recognized globally for his contributions to the field of non-covalent interactions, as his work on hydrogen bonds changed chemistry textbooks. He currently leads a scientific group on non-covalent interactions at the Institute of Organic Chemistry and Biochemistry of the Czech Academy of Sciences. With all the research and work responsibilities, what is one thing you relax with outside of science? So, I will repeat the question once again. So, with all the research and work responsibilities you have, what is the one thing you relax with outside of science?
So the proper answer is, of course, relax with science. But certainly it is impossible to spend 24 hours with the science. But frankly speaking, if you are not living the whole day and the whole night with the science, you cannot obtain the proper results. But okay, so the concert, reading, I like fishing, but even there, if you are somewhere outside in the countryside, all the time you are thinking of the last problem you are solving in the laboratory, and well, we are doing because we like it, we are enjoying it. This is not our duty. We are very preferable because we are all our life we are playing, and we have a privilege that we are paying for it. So that's really great.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mark Nelson, founder and managing director of Radiant Energy Group, that is Mark Nelson, has also worked as a consultant for the clean energy industry and environmental organizations worldwide. His analytical contributions have received coverage in reputable publications, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and leading European papers. His career goal is to stop nuclear power plants from closing and get new ones to build. I definitely want to ask you, how do you see the nuclear situation in Czech? Good, fine, terrible?
Hey, everybody. Yeah, no, you guys are pretty good. You just need to get your reactor vendor selected and built. But There's that question asked. I'm going to take the liberty of explaining something. I am Mr. Mark Nelson here, not Dr. Mark Nelson. There's been confusion in other places I've been, but I wanted to very briefly say that I was a smart kid like you. I did well in university, got a scholarship to Cambridge University, studied nuclear engineering, got a full scholarship from the Cambridge University Overseas Trust and my college, Pembroke College, Cambridge, to get my Ph.D. I had an advisor I trusted and respected. I had an amazing, beautiful set of large rooms that made me look like an absolute boss to all the other students. It was like in a really sweet spot in Cambridge. And I had an amazing set of friends and a wonderful girlfriend that eventually became my wife. Only one thing, it didn't go quite right, and I got kicked out about a day or two before I could withdraw, and I left without a Ph.D. and was unemployed for a year, sitting on a couch in a very cheap American city, licking my wounds and trying to recover. So, this is going to be a very interesting evening because I'm up here with absolute leading scientists, and I didn't think I could ever do science, didn't think I would have a good outcome after that because, like you, I'd been a very high-flying student with great expectations. So, yes, to answer the first question, you guys have an outstanding nuclear program. Those of you who are Czech, congratulations. You're in a better position than a lot of other nations in the world. Hard work remains to be done, but a lot of the hardest work is done already. But hopefully in our other questions, we can come to how I gave you that introduction, how that all could be true, yet I'm still sitting in front of you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Vladimíra Petráková, her favorite physics book is Feynman's Lectures, and she likes the Abbey criterion. Vladimíra Petráková works at the Heirovský Institute of Physical Chemistry of the Czech Academy of Sciences, where she is involved in imaging biomolecules using plasmonic nanoparticles. That is, she studies how light interacts with particles smaller than its wavelength. She is also a co-founder of CzechPads in Science, a global network for Czech scientists abroad. I believe even established scientists have to learn something new all the time. So what is the most recent thing you have learned?
It's on. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. And look at you. It's amazing to be here. First of all, I'm not an established scientist, an accomplished scientist. I'm at the very beginning of my scientific career. And it's flattering to hear this, but, you know, I very often feel that I don't belong. Yeah? So I'm still yet to maybe become this accomplished scientist. And maybe I'm on the track, maybe not. But what I learned yesterday was that slit on the camera, when you buy a very expensive camera and you don't use it for a long time, that slit, the shutter that opens so the light can come in and you can actually detect your photons from your molecules. Yeah, so when you don't use this camera for a long time, the slit is not going to open anymore, even though you hear this characteristic click. Yeah. So, I learned it the hard way. I thought that everything on my setup was, you know, aligned. You know, I had to check every component. I thought that the mistake was somewhere else because I heard this click. Yeah, but no. It's, you know, the glue or the whatever that, you know, not the glue, but the, you know, the thing that makes it actually, you know, sliding can age. Yeah, and then you have to help it with, you know, manually. So yeah, yesterday I learned that, you know, a camera, the slit can age. Yeah, and I spent 8 hours, you know, figuring that out, and yeah, I managed to fix it.
Thank you, Dr. Vladimíra Petráková. Dr. Lukáš Palatinus. He is engaged in electron crystallography and the determination of nanocrystal structure through electron scattering, and conducts his research at the Institute of Physics of the Czech Academy of Sciences. Electron crystallography caught his interest on an internship in Switzerland, And with this perspective topic, he got to the title page of Science Journal. Could you tell us how can a scientist from the Czech Republic got to the cover of Science magazine?
Hello. Yeah. Thanks for the introduction. It's nice, really nice to be here. To answer your question, I don't think it's the answer you want to hear, but a big part of that is luck. You just have to be lucky. Of course, you also need to have a good result, but at this level, it's really quite a bit about luck. But also, yeah. In this case, it was, say, something like 7 to 8 years of hard work before we had the results that ultimately got to the title page.
Thank you. Last but definitely not least, Dr. Helena Reichlová. Helena Reichlová received her Ph.D. from Charles University and did part of her studies at Ohio University in the United States. She works on spintronics and magnonics with the aim of contributing to the development of new sustainable information technology at the Institute of Physics of the Czech Academy of Sciences. Not so long ago, she founded a new Dioscuri Center, her own research group. Well, the magnonics, can you explain to us what it is?
Okay, so thank you for the introduction. Thank you for staying with us here in the evening. And magnons. So magnons, you can imagine actually rather easily, like these football stadiums, right? When people are lifting their hands up and somehow propagating the wave through the stadium. So imagine now that the people are electrons and their hands are spins. And you can propagate the information about the spin without moving the people, right? Because you don't need to take the individual people with the hand up and propagate them, having the electron carrying the spin, but you can also have the spin propagating like a wave through the sitting people. And this is very similar to the concept of magnon, right? You have electrons, the small particles which all of you know, with their spins, and the spins are just kind of periodically changing, let's say the angle you can imagine, and propagating as a wave from one position to another. Does it help?
Sure does. Thank you very much. So that was the first round of introduction, and I would like to follow that up with the question, quite easy one. What is the best thing on being a scientist?
First of all, that you decide what you will do. This is only you. You will find something more interesting. You can follow that direction. And well, we are not working from 8 up to 4 or 5, but the whole day. We are enjoying the job, and especially if we are sometimes successful, so that's great if we find something which can be used. I'm not talking about the new drug, but any new findings which can help is great. So definitely the career of scientist is nice. Of course, you should be prepared for the situation that you will definitely be paid as good as the lawyer. You will be not able to buy probably the villa in Prague, but on the other hand, you can have a very enjoyable and interesting life. So go ahead and enjoy it.
So first of all, I have to wrestle with something. Am I a scientist? I certainly studied engineering and nuclear engineering up to a level that would have made me extremely advanced only a few hundred years ago. Certainly, almost everything I've studied would be considered science in the sense of the Greeks and what they're thinking of what a complete education would be. But have I published scientific papers? No, I'm a co-author on one Cambridge study that my lab group put out as I was being kicked out of the university. That was awkward. Anyway, here's what I would say. when you mentioned what's your favorite part about, or the best part of being a scientist, best isn't quite the right word, but I wanted to mention something. About 2 years ago, this month, full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russian forces began. About a week afterwards, the capture of the largest nuclear plant in Europe occurred, and it was a Friday night, I believe. It was something like 7 p.m. Chicago time, where I live, when I was getting a bunch of panicked text messages saying, you need to get on Twitter immediately. You need to get on right now. And I get on, and there's this thing, Twitter Spaces, some kind of like radio call-in show that is on the Twitter app. And I see that there's a Twitter space with several thousand people, and people are sending me messages. I don't know these people, saying, hey, we need you, the topic of nuclear is coming up, people are panicking. So I go sit in my living room in my apartment, put my phone on the table, enter into the Twitter space, and within a few minutes, I find myself with no particular fame, and I guess I have a nuclear engineering degree from Cambridge, so that's nice for the people stalking me on LinkedIn. I found myself talking to over 10,000 people, panicking out of their minds about whether there was going to be a massive Chernobyl explosion in southern Ukraine that was going to destroy Europe. Let's get darker. About 30 minutes into me carefully, calmly explaining this type of nuclear reactor, it can't do what happened at Chernobyl. Furthermore, Chernobyl could have been handled better, but let's talk about this one. The videos we're seeing online seem to show this, there's this amount of cooling water, blah, 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 blah. As I'm starting to address that, I get a flood of panicked messages from strangers into my inbox, including one saying, my wife is panicking and thinking we need to be ready to abort our child. I don't know who you are, but could you tell me whether we should? Heavy, huh? So am I a scientist? I don't know. At that moment, when there were people with physics Ph.D.s from Princeton going on the news to say we're all going to die because it's a nuclear meltdown, and they haven't done science in decades, but it didn't matter because they're in the New York Times and they're always available for a quick panic call from CNN. I was, with no particular designation as the person who should be talking about this, doing what might be considered International Atomic Energy Agency's job on Twitter at 1 a.m., then 2 a.m., then 3 a.m., Chicago time, all night, all through the night. On again, speaking live, off again, handling messages from people making life or death decisions. I guess I was forced to be, as a no PhD dropout, I was forced to be a public scientist. Is best the right word for this? No, it's not. But it's one of the most important things I ever did, and a lot of why I'm here in front of you today is probably due to what happened in that and a few other similar moments of all-night vigils in front of my smartphone with my wife in bed, trying to stop the world from panicking.
In that order, amazing, amazing. A bit down to earth. For me, what's the best about science is that there are lots of things you can do, and you can contribute in many different ways. And I like to divide my scientific work into three categories. One is the science itself, so that's the discoveries that we're making. Another is raising new scientists, raising students and helping educate people. And another is service to the society and service to the scientific community. And one can, choose to contribute in all these things. And this balance, that, okay, when the experiment doesn't run as well in the lab, then maybe, I can teach students and at least, teach them how something works. Or maybe I can find a non-profit organization, as Czechspad in Science is, and maybe help other people, stay connected to their home country and maybe bring their knowledge back from abroad and, then inspire others. Yeah, so there's diversity in science, and that you can really choose where you want to contribute, and that when one thing doesn't go as smoothly as it can, you can maybe also do some other thing. That's what I very much enjoy.
So, to me, I think the best answer to this question is, I'd say you don't really become a scientist. You're born as a scientist. Being scientist is a state of mind, state of thinking about the world. And the best thing about working as a scientist is being able to work, to have a profession in what you actually live. So you enjoy yourself by working in the field or by thinking about things. That's actually a great fun. And at the same time, I think everybody has certain need to be useful. There are many things, many ways in which one can be useful, but working as a scientist is one of the great ways to at least potentially be useful to many people, ideally to the whole mankind. That's also quite exciting.
So many great reasons were already said, and I agree with all that. I personally find that it's very creative work, which you can also shape yourself. You can really choose the topic which is interesting for you and go for it. So this, I think, is very unique on the science, that you can choose the dark spot on the map of universal knowledge and choose to uncover it. So choose your way, where your heart goes. In the fundamental research, you don't even need to think immediately about some business plan, about revenues, right? So you just choose, I want to understand deeply this part and try to go for it. And last but not least, I personally really appreciate that the people who are working in science are, in my opinion, very nice. That it's a very nice community of people who are having this curiosity-driven motivation, and generally I think that the environment is very, very nice and pleasant to be in. Yeah.
Thank you. We have many young students here in the audience, and I know that many of them are thinking about the career of scientist or researcher. So can you maybe describe a little bit your career path to the current point, or it's up to you whether you want to talk about the scientific topics which you studied or the study itself. I believe that's up to you.
So of course I believe, and you probably know it, that very important to starting to trigger the career is to have a good teacher at the gymnasium or the ground school. This is what happened to me. So we have an excellent professor in chemistry at the gymnasium. So this was the first trigger. Then second, I was lucky that at the university I studied the nuclear physics faculty. But my hobby was the interaction between molecules, not interaction between the nuclei, between protons and neutrons and nuclei, but between molecules. And my professor recommended me to go to the Academy of Sciences and to visit. A big name at that time was Professor Zahradník, quantum chemist. So this was the second point. So what I would like to say that it is important to be lucky, please. Believe or not, but you should be lucky to have a chance to do something. And then when you are starting career, so again, I'm from Institute of Organic Chemistry, as I mentioned, and probably this is one of the most successful institute here, because it is recommended with the world used drug against HIV. And this is connected with the name of Antonin Holý at our institute. And he all his life studied DNA. And several times the institute tried to convince him, stop with this one and do something other. And he said, no, this is my job. And finally, after many years, he was the man who discovered drug against HIV. just for your information, this is now what is produced in Gilead in California, and our institute is earning each year about $100 million American for that discovery. But the money are not important, but please imagine that he's saving yearly about 2 or 3 millions of the people, or even more, at the world. So this is what's happened there. And his motto was, you should be lucky in the science. Where is the problem? So first is to define the problem, to find the problem. But the second is at the proper time to leave the problem. If you recognize that this is the project is not healthy and you cannot obtain fine results, you should leave it. But it is not easy. No one can help you. I know many excellent scientists who are spending all his life investigating something, but without any reasonable and good results. So find the project, but leave the project, yeah? And then if you are making something, what is very important, not to overlook details. But on the other hand, not to go too much in detail, because then you are trying to find some detail which this is not important, so not to overlook it. And I can mention something from my career. Our very important discovery concerns the hydrogen bonding. So there are 2 molecules interact together, and you have a proton donor and proton acceptor. You can make the hydrogen bond. So this is one of the most important part of the non-covalent interaction. And when we started, so it was completely clear that the experimental evidence of the hydrogen bonding is so-called a red shift of the stretching frequency. I'm not going to the details, but this was the dogma. And when we made our experiment and calculation, then we found that this is not the case, that we obtained opposite, not the increase, but decrease of the bond length, and not the decrease, but increase of the vibration frequency. So the blue shift, but this was nonsense. And the textbook mentioned it should be a red shift. And now this is the moment. So you start to think, we are making error somewhere, because everybody is saying that you must have a red shift of the frequency, but we have a blue shift. This was the computation predicted. What to do? No, the best way is to leave it. Leave it and start something other, because you can have only troubles if you are trying to publish something which is nonsense. It happens rather frequently. But we decided this is not the case. We make better and better and better calculations. It was still clear that there must be, for that particular system, blue shift. Of course, the most important is to have an experiment. So finally, we find somebody in Frankfurt who made a rather simple infrared spectroscopy and really confirmed it. Yeah? And at that moment, everything was fine. Yeah? Then our discovery led to the change of the definition of the hydrogen bonding. The IUPAC proposed a new definition, which is now cited everywhere. And this is what happened. Yeah. So what was at the very beginning? Not to overlook the details. The detail was that it's the OH frequency is not shifted to the red, but to the blue. Why? What is behind? To explain it. There are many possibilities where comes the problem: harmonicity, unharmonicity, a level of calculation, correlation energy, simply, and so on. We were able to investigate everything, and then we say, no, we must, this is true. And then, again, to find somebody who is willing to make the experiment for you, it is again not easy, yeah? Finally, we succeed. The experiment was not too difficult. And at the very end, there is a new definition which is connected with our group, new definition of the hydrogen bonding. So this is simply the essence of science, what we are doing, and what is including that you should be lucky. Then you should, this is like if you are playing poker, yeah? In the proper time, you must have in proper time the proper cards in your hand. It means the proper knowledge, proper colleagues who can help you, proper colleagues who can make the experiments, and of course, proper colleagues who can tell you, go away from that subject. It is that. Okay, if you have this one, you can make a good science, and I wish you can do it.
So how do you guys feel being told that one of the most important things you can have to have a good science career is luck? Okay, if that makes you feel bad, put your hand up. Everybody looking around to see whether other people they know are already putting their hands up. Okay, hands down. How many people feel luck? Heck yeah, I'm not that good at math, but I'm lucky. Anybody, any hands? A few. All right, I like your style. Okay, let me just say that this is extremely good advice you're getting up here. I can't vouch for the value of my own. I'm talking about my co-panelists. And for you to be here to hear it means you have as much luck as you need. You're here, you're not somewhere else. It's not everybody in the program. They didn't get lucky enough to be here. All of you being here tonight to hear really good advice that would have been really valuable to me at different times, you are lucky enough for science. Congratulations to you all. You can all pat yourself on the back. So you should all feel good that luck is required, and by being here to hear that, you have the amount of luck you're going to need. Now, the rest, you know, hard work and getting better at math and all that other stuff, that will come, but you have the luck, and may you also have the hustle. We'll see. Once you get off to university and have to drive yourself, you will learn whether you have the hustle. About me, as the proud Ph.D. kick-out, dropout here on this panel, let me tell you something I was doing in science. So I was kicked out from Cambridge, but I was still absolutely fascinated by this problem that was just irritating me, which is like if you have all these countries in Europe that have power plants running, and we have hourly data about which power plants are running, and we have these hours all the way through the years, several years, and you see not just the hourly data of how much power is in each country, but the flow of power from one country to another. So Germany's exporting sometimes when the sun's up, they're importing sometimes when the sun's down, and so on in a sort of a network, you know? You could draw a European graph, right? And see that there's power flowing in and out in all these hours according to the data we have. Now, here's another interesting problem. What's the best way to get low carbon? You guys, while you're having a nice, fun, worry-free childhood, people older than you, and in most cases way dumber than you, are making a lot of crazy-ass decisions about how to run your power grid. They're not doing a particularly good job of it in most of Europe, so I'm sorry about that, but some of you aren't European, so anyway. So there's this problem of people are saying you should do this versus that to decarbonize. We have this hourly data saying which power plant types, coal, gas, oil, trash, nuclear, hydro, wind, solar, all these power plant mixes are going on, and then there's the different countries. What I was obsessed with is how much carbon should we attribute to, say, the French energy mix from, say, coal plants in Germany exporting to France? And I was so inspired by the trickiness of this problem, which I thought I was solving on my own, and I guess it was early days then, so I might have been, that I didn't worry so much that I'd been, you know, kicked off my scholarship and effectively evicted from Europe. So I go back home, and I, for the first time in my life, have nothing I'm supposed to be doing. I feel that all these people out there are going to grad school and getting their internships and going to jobs, and I had a few applications into nuclear plants, but I wasn't hearing back. Instead, I started to read books, and books that were so exciting and so fun and so satisfied my curiosity that I just kind of forgot that I was unemployed and a failure. One of the books that I read was the Feynman lectures. I'd gotten them in a rush as a high schooler because I thought this will make me smart enough to go to MIT. So I had these Feynman lectures, and I'd never read them, and I just got to sit there, a bum, unemployed, at coffee shops, reading slowly, one page at a time, very slowly, the way those lectures, yes, with a pad of engineering paper out and a nice mechanical pencil, because I'm an engineer, truly, not a scientist. So my mechanical pencil out, just taking notes, satisfying my own desire to learn. Nobody telling me what to do, plenty of people telling me, hey, man, you're a dropout now, you failed. So then on this electricity problem, eventually I did a few little toy problems to realize the following. It didn't actually matter. Like, it was marginal, like 1 or 2%, like the flow in and out. So there we go. I knew that the answer would probably not be worth any extra effort. But then I thought, okay, well, I already have this data downloaded. I might as well see what the actual carbon totals in each hour of the grid for each of these countries are. Maybe I can compare them. So I had this fascinating problem. I learned enough about it to realize that the results wouldn't be impressive. Like, I really wanted to stick it to Germany, and I wasn't going to be able to. So I moved on to just taking a bunch of data, accidentally making a model, even a study, you might say, in an Excel chart. And then I drew up this Excel chart that crashed Excel several times before I got more RAM in my computer. And I just put 8,760 data points, 1 per hour, for over the course of the year in France, so French electricity. And I made it green colored, because that's a good color. And then I did the same thing. I put Germany's 8,760 data points, again, with my extremely simple model, assuming a certain carbon level for a certain type of coal, certain carbon level for a certain type of natural gas power, 0 for the low carbon, just because I was saying at the point of emissions. And I made this little chart. And then I didn't share it publicly, but somebody without my permission took it from a closed discussion group, and they put it on Twitter. It became the most viral chart that had been around energy Twitter back in those early days, and it launched my career completely accidentally. Was it science? Well, I don't know. It was kind of a model. It helped inspire a lot of later work where people, I'm sure, got master's degrees or more doing stuff, and it fundamentally changed the conversation about decarbonization, at least among clean energy experts, honest ones, in the US and in Europe. Was it science? I think it was, but what I'm trying to point out, and one of the things you gain from reading books, say, by Richard Feynman, is intense curiosity and your natural luck that got you to this room are enough to get you through some very weird hard times that may convince you you're not a scientist. Now, a bunch of you are not going to go through those hard times. I'm very sorry for you. You need some failure. I don't know if I'm going to get agreement from the panelists, but you need a bit of failure, and the earlier it is when your bones are still nice and rubbery and you can bounce and land on your feet when you fall, the more you're going to learn from it. I hope what you're hearing, and we'll hear from the other three, is the fairly extreme diversity of ways in which people at least as smart as you, at least as lucky as you, are going to find pathways that are going to be really meaningful.
Wow, I'm just impressed to be on the panel. I'm listening very hard about success in science. For me, it was, again, a different story. And again, like when someone would ask me, how did I get here? I would also say lucky. The thing about, or the tough thing about being lucky is that it's very hard to realize that you're lucky or not lucky at that particular moment when the things happen. Yeah, and the things that might seem that you're very unlucky at the moment, or that it was unplanned or undesirable at the moment, might actually turn up to be your luck. Yeah, so don't try to hold too much to this luck, but it might come in a very unexpected ways. For me, it was that I got pregnant like 2 weeks after I started university. Yeah, which is not really a time that you want to get pregnant normally. Yeah, and it very much affected my career. And in many ways, and it very much limited the scope of my choices. Yeah, because then I had a baby, that I had to take care of. I had to somehow be able to juggle full-time take care of the baby, and then little girl eventually, and full-time studying, because I didn't feel like I would drop out. I felt that maybe university could still be doable, even while having a child. And but still, I was, I really had very limited time. For example, I couldn't choose to do any bachelor thesis that would require lab work, because I simply didn't have the time to do the lab work. So I chose something that was coding. Yeah, and I learned how to code, and I'm very happy that I did. Yeah, and I just got my way through being geographically fixed in my hometown, where I lived with my daughter, because I didn't have time to be traveling, commuting somewhere. Yeah, and even then, in these constrained conditions, I was somehow able to find my way, by trying some luck and trying to always choose the best option that I had within my limits. And why I'm saying this is that even though you might feel that you're not privileged, that you don't have it all, that you're not lucky, you still have your faith in your hands. You still have this power of deciding whether you want to drop out, maybe sometimes not, but maybe if you want to, go for it and continue doing science, even though you weren't, even your conditions, just the world played against you. So you really have it in your hand, and when you feel like doing something, you can find a way, and you should go for it.
So what was my path to science? Just to return, not to return back, but to follow the original question. I think everybody has their own, so I'll just share mine. I actually wanted to be a scientist since the 8th grade or so. So basically, before that, I wanted to be a teacher of history in Czech language. So after I got over that, I actually wanted to be a scientist, and very soon I wanted to be a crystallographer. So maybe in addition to the luck that has been discussed here, and that I think we just don't want to overstate. It's good to be lucky, but in everything you do in life, I think that one of the other important aspects is, or at least in my case, was determination. I just wanted to do science, and I do it. Maybe I was just lucky. So I started. So I went to the university, study geology actually, because in the good old times, crystallography was closer linked to mineralogy and therefore geology. So if I knew what I know now, I would probably study mathematics or physics. But at that time, I decided to study geology, which I don't regret. It was a great time, but it gave me nothing in terms of education in physics. We had literally 1 semester of physics. So I'm now working at the Institute of Physics, but I'm actually not a physicist. I'm self-taught, maybe quasi-physicist. And so then actually my path was very smooth. I started university, then I found an internship at the Institute of Physics. Then I found a Ph.D. position in Germany. After that, I went to Switzerland for a postdoc. And actually, there were no twists, no sudden changes of the direction. And I actually don't know how exceptional that is. I think we more hear about the twists and sudden changes. But in my case, it was actually everything very smooth. And although it sounds probably quite boring, I think in a sense I'm privileged. And maybe that's it.
So the question was my path in science. Yeah, actually, I think I was a very mainstream girl. I didn't have any symptoms of a scientist. I think I wanted to be all these things, like caring about horses and being a medical doctor and being an actor and being a singer and being everything. And then my parents had actually a very good point that maybe physics is a little bit wiser choice, that I can always go to sing, but with physics, this is very difficult to catch up afterwards. When I decide to go for singing, then it will be difficult to go for something else. So math and physics, they kind of told me that it's a pretty universal background, and you can later on decide if you want to go to finances, you really want to get rich, you want to go to some engineering and really make some prototypes or something, or you can stay in science. And actually, I didn't have any any clear vision. I kind of let it flow a little bit. Then I started to study the bachelor, and of course I wanted to study astrophysics or particle physics, like probably how many of you want to study particle physics and astrophysics? Oh, wow, so this is not cool anymore. So it was cool when I was a bachelor. And yes, and so then I learned that it's also not how it looks from outside, that not everybody is kind of flying to moon, and not everybody is kind of constructing spaceships. So, and I realized that there are also like many interesting fields which I didn't know about. So I just tried to keep my eyes open. I tried to interact with many people, see many labs. This is, I think, very important, that you just don't take the first offer for bachelor thesis which somebody offers you, just like go to multiple places. And also, I would not underestimate the mobility between different countries. So I think that now you have so many opportunities. So I was also taking these things. We discussed that Erasmus, a great thing. So I was leaving for part of my studies. Then I was leaving for my PhD again away. So this mobility also gave me some perspective. And I realized that actually the condensed matter, this thing which sounds very boring for you, this is the solid state physics, is actually very nice, and you can do useful things and still have your own team. And yes, this worked pretty fine for me.
Thank you, Dr. Reichlová, because you mentioned the mobility. And that's actually my next question, because, well, I believe that all of you spend some time abroad. And, well, we can all the time hear it, that it's quite important to travel abroad and to do some research, some study there. So how much important is it really? Maybe we can change the order. And let's start with Dr. Petráková, because you actually founded the CzechPads in science, so maybe you can mention it as well.
Yes. So CzechPads in science. So the word, the CzechPads, it's like we play with expats and Czechs. Yeah. So that's the name. Yes. So it's CzechPads in science, and when I was in postdoc in Berlin, I found that, yeah, maybe sometimes I want to return back to the Czech Republic, but how to do that? Yeah, there are no open positions in Czech, and so I thought that, yeah, maybe some other people also have this problem and want to stay connected. And I founded this initiative to help scientists, stay connected with their home country and maybe then return and build this network. And I mean, it's crucial to go abroad. It's amazing. It's amazing experience. You see new culture. You see new lab, how science is done somewhere else. Yeah, in a different scientific system. Yeah, in a different scientific environment. Yeah, so it's amazing when you have the chance. Yeah, at the same time, I very much, as a mother of children, yeah, that I know that sometimes it's just not possible. Yeah, and I believe that these benefits that one can have abroad in a limited way, one can have also by switching labs within, their region. Yeah, so this diversity in, exposure, yeah, can be also, done within an environment when you choose international groups where there are, where the science is just done differently from from how you were educated. But otherwise, going abroad, even with children, is amazing. It's a wonderful experience. It helps a lot.
Well, here it's hard to say anything that hasn't been said, or it doesn't sound trivial. Of course, it's really good to switch places, to go abroad. It was certainly good for me, and I don't think anybody who made this experience would tell you it was a bad thing. Of course, it can happen that your stay is not the way you plan, things don't work out the way you'd like to, but it's still good, and even if the There's a saying, the experience doesn't have to be nice, it should be strong. And that's certainly the case. So, well, I think also things change, and it's not unusual nowadays for even high school students like you to go abroad for some time. Maybe if you could raise your hand who was actually abroad for some time away from the school where you normally study. Are there people like that here? Yeah, I mean, okay. Not really? Okay, well, but... Okay.
How many of you have been abroad for any kind of activity that wasn't vacation? So overseas. So educational of any kind overseas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for translating. Yeah. So for you, it's actually natural, and that's a good thing. I would add maybe. It's also not really surprising, but I'd explicitly say that learning a foreign language, if you go somewhere else than to an English-speaking country, that's also a benefit that shouldn't be underestimated. Yeah, I think that's it.
I've got something that I want to add. It can be a disaster. It can be a disaster, so make your choice wisely, yeah. And with CzechSpats, we're trying to do workshops on how, advising people how to do this choice. Yes, so when you choose wrong and you're abroad and you're lonely without, the help of your friends, family, it can be very, very tough. And there are cases of this, how tough this can be. So just choose wisely, because this escape, changing topics is not as easy when you're abroad in a foreign country on a visa or, something that just choose wisely.
So to do not scare you more, I think there is not so many cases, hopefully, which are so bad. I think mostly it's positive experience. I saw only positive things. I don't know, one good thing which I realized when I still had from high school a lot of friends who studied also humanities or language or law or medicine, that in physics, generally, I suddenly saw that I can go to any lab around the world and start from the day one, because the Newton laws are simply everywhere the same, right? You don't need to adjust to the local habits, culture, and things like that. So this is like a small bonus for you probably, which are mostly interested in math and physics. One more point which I would like to mention. I know for you it's like too early, but at some point the traveling starts to get annoying. At least I'm in the age when I'm not enjoying it anymore. So enjoy it when you are young. You can enjoy it now, but it will be a moment when you will be happy that you have your part of traveling done and you don't need to do it so much anymore. Yeah.
I'm right on that transition. I'm living in Chicago. On the 30th of January, I was in DC. 31st was in New York. Left on the 2nd of February for Oslo. 2 days in Oslo, 2 days in Tallinn, Estonia. Back home for a few hours, then out to Utah this last weekend, and at home for a day. And now I've just arrived today from international travel. So yes, that sounds glamorous, and in a way it is a little bit. One of the most important things that I do when I travel is I always have a hard copy of a book that I'm curious about and want to be reading. At the moment, it's a professor in Denmark who wrote a big book summing up his lifetime career watching very large construction projects fail and a few of them succeed. And he's giving advice for those who would build really large construction projects. And his academic practice is that he built the world's biggest database of construction projects so he can index how other new projects are expected to go and how they're going once they start falling apart, and pay him the big bucks to come unscrew it up for them. Is that science? Well, it's certainly a lot of data, statistics, a lot of international travel for him. It's kind of interesting, and I've got his book, so I'm traveling with that, and I always have it so that if I'm lucky enough to get a moment when my phone doesn't work or I don't have internet or I'm awake on a plane, I'm there and ready to read. I have a very, very special advantage for somebody who wanted to do international travel and be in science. I was born in America, where you can know only a single language and you already know the international language of science. But something very interesting happened when I went off to England to study at Cambridge. Our nuclear engineering course was about 21 students, about half of which were from China. And everybody could speak English, except when we went and there's this old British professor with a mustache. I didn't have a mustache at the time, but this guy had a mustache and he had a tweed jacket with the elbow patches, and he had all sorts of extremely weird phrases that I, as a native English speaker, was struggling with. After the class, the 10 Chinese students were in a panic. They said to me, "We don't get it. We passed our English proficiency. When you talk to us, Mark, we understand every word you say, and we did not understand a single thing that was said in 2 hours of lectures from our old English professors." And I realized that one of the things that I gained through lots of travel was changing my communication level to match the English language skills, not the intellect maybe, but the English language skills of a wide variety of people around the world. I had studied abroad, so I studied abroad in Russia and in Tajikistan, weirdly enough, and a few other places, enough to know that I was not very talented at languages, except in the use of English stripped down to be very clear and to be understood. I was maybe a little dramatic when I was talking about my finest hour in science, dealing with the panic and fear around the first ever capture of a nuclear plant in war. But one of the reasons why I was, I guess, trustworthy is I was using very plain language with no idioms, very simple. How do you talk about fission products to a panicked audience that does not know what a fission product is? Think about the number of topics you've got in there. First, you've got that there are these atoms. Okay, most people are pretty good with there being atoms. The atoms can split. People raised in the nuclear era, even unscientific or unscientific people or people without an education might have that. But that splitting is called fission. When it splits, chunks come out. Fission fragments. So you can see that the practice of breaking down a complicated topic in a desperate situation really benefited from having talked to people in English all around the world, many different cultures, many different education levels, different interests, different attitudes towards me as a foreigner and as an American, everywhere from positive to quite negative. And in a moment of testing, I was able to be better because I was used to talking with people on their terms. And that is something that you can really get from travel.
Okay, so I first should fully agree with what my colleagues mentioned here. So only very few points and comments. So first of all, it's really for us, the people from this, for Czechs origin, it's very important or even necessary to go outside. Preferentially to English-speaking country to properly learn the language. I know it's not easy because we see now Erasmus, England is out of the business, so you don't have chance to go there. But anyway, that's very important. Then if you finish the university, you probably would like to make PhD, and then now it's really again recommendable to go outside. But now, and it was also mentioned, you can have a problem because at that age, both you have a partner. And I know that it's very difficult if you would like to go with your partner. And your partner, for example, is doing humanity and you are a physicist. It's not easy to find a good PhD at physics and simultaneously at the same university or the same city to find a good PhD opportunity for the humanity. I know the problems, I know what I'm talking about, and it is really not easy. And at that moment you still don't have children. With the children, it is more complicated. It's doable. I know several colleagues of mine, they made a nice PhD in America with 1 or 2 children. It works. But once again, it is not easy. And as was mentioned, be very careful selecting in and think in advance what can happen within 1 or 2 years. But if you would like to make a science, you should go outside, you should study at a different university, you should perform your master or PhD outside, and every time try to select not only English-speaking countries, but a good university, and especially try to find supervisor, because the person who will mainly affect your future career is your supervisor or your advisor. And not only that he or she is a good or big names, but if you are with him or her, you can learn what does it mean science, and you can maybe make a good science in the future. So that's all. And again, once again, good luck.
Well, I have one follow-up question. Sometimes we hear that it is ungrateful when young people go to study abroad or go abroad after the studies and stay there. Is it wrong if they stay abroad? I don't know who wants to answer.
I'll mention this from my point of view. I grew up in my, I thought, very boring part of the United States. I'm from Oklahoma. The term used by other Americans is flyover country. It's the part that you fly over in an airplane when you connect to the exciting cities. It's not even Texas. Anyway, so when I went off to Cambridge, the day I got there, I was like, yeah, I'm staying. I have no need to go back. I want to be gone. England is exciting. Europe is exciting. There's so many interesting people here from all over the world. I went back because I lost my visa when I got kicked out of the Ph.D. program. In hindsight, I'm very happy with it. It turned out to be lucky for various reasons, but I'm saying that from a position of fairly extreme privilege, having been born with American citizenship. What was interesting is the number of Cambridge friends, say British friends, that found their way to America. In terms of going versus staying, that is very hard. We could almost change the question to being, why didn't I go back to Oklahoma? One of the big considerations, I would say, is your passport. If you're a European, I don't know if there's like a Czech nationalism where you should stay in Czechia because you got your education here and you owe something. I think that probably we'll see what's said, but the greatest thing you can do if you are, you know, an 18-year-old Czech nationalist, for example, is to go do as much as you can. Probably in European Union is generally going to be my suggestion for many of you, though if you want to play for the big bucks, you basically have to aim for America. So it's a little bit about what you think, how lucky you think you are. The USA is a weird, hard place. The stakes are extremely high. The money is big. The movement is fast. It's a crazy place. It is not necessarily the best place to raise children for a number of reasons, and that was something I thought of when I was trying to figure out whether I wanted to stay. But one of the best things you can do, and this goes all the way back to luck, is to be a good friend and keep up with your friends. Sometimes it will feel like you're neglecting your studies if you're being a good friend and keeping up with your friend, but you're going to have friends dispersed all over the world. You're going to have friends be able to offer you very good advice and other friendships, connections onward. And one of the top ways to be lucky, one of the best ways to make the best of going overseas or going back is to be a good, trustworthy friend, be there for people, and you will find that whether you choose to go or stay, you're going to have a better time of it with good friends.
I have a strong opinion on this, so I want to share it with you. My opinion is that it's absolutely not wrong if anyone chooses to stay abroad. What is very wrong is when the institutions in the Czech Republic and people in the Czech Republic decide to cut them out, yeah, we can choose to stay connected and invite them and, and bring what they got there, yeah. Here, they still feel the sentiment of being Czech. Yeah, they still want to contribute, they want to help. They feel flattered when they're invited for, to lead a seminar or to discuss in a panel. Yeah, but what I see very often here is that somehow there's this, maybe people are shy or something, but people from here, on institutions from here, don't invite these big shots that we've got abroad. Or they don't even consider them Czech enough. Yeah. So, for example, there's this guy, Václav Smil. Have you ever heard this name, Václav Smil? Václav, you should. You should. He's one of the most influential Czech-born scientists of our time. Yeah, energy.
Yeah, he's the most widely read energy writer.
Yeah. So this guy, he's not very known. He speaks with heavy Czech accent. He's super Czech. He's skeptical. He's so Czech. And I wrote him like a year ago or maybe 2 years ago during the pandemic when we organized a lecture series, if he would give us a lecture. I wrote him in Czech because, I felt, I was the first one ever to contact him from the Czech Republic to give a lecture. Me, a girl, yeah, from a non-profit, yeah, Czech Academy of Sciences didn't invite him. Charles University, his alma mater, has never, ever invited him. We've got Martin Jinek here, who invented this CRISPR technology. It's one of the biggest inventions of our lifetime. Yeah, he was there, doing the work. He didn't get the Nobel Prize because his boss got, but he did the work by his own hands. Yeah. And, again, when we were inviting him to give a lecture, he went, oh, can we consider him a Czech scientist when he left for his studies or, for master? Can we consider him Czech? Of course, yeah. So, yeah, the message is it's perfectly fine when people can do their work where they do it best and where they have the biggest impact. If it's abroad, it's abroad. If it's here, it's also their choice. But the biggest problem is to, shut them and to lose this connection.
I am afraid that I now not fully agree with my colleagues. So the story is following. Probably you know that universities in this country are all not excellent or the best one. You probably know that the best university, this one, Charles University, has a number about 450 in the world, about 1,000 best universities, 450. The second is the Brno University, which is about 1,000. Czech universities are not too good. Czech science is, again, nothing special, nothing special. If you look any evaluation in the world, you will find the first Czech name with number 500 or something like this one, about this one. That's true. Look at the number of Nobel Prize. In chemistry, we have FRSC. Yeah. But when? 50 years ago. Next, nothing special. Okay, so where is the chance? So there is only one chance. Go abroad, study at the university, make a good Ph.D., but then come back and try to improve the level of our universities and of our science. I know it's not easy, because if you are good, you will receive excellent conditions abroad. You will never receive comparable conditions here at the university or at academic institutes. Never as good as this one. You must have some other reason to come back. But if you are not coming back, so within 10 years, Charles University will be not 400, 500, but will be 860 or something like this one. And the Czech science will be not as good or as bad as now, but it will be even worse. We badly need, look, how many scientists from abroad is coming back, is coming to the Czech country to make the science here? Not many. I know some of them, but there should be a good reason. Girlfriend or partner from other side. Okay, in our institute we have some of them, but this is the main reason. It's understandable. The conditions here are not as good as abroad. Yeah. So we cannot attract the top scientists to come here. We cannot do it. So the only chance is to try to hire a young generation. So it means you. So I know this may be a bit pessimistic, but what I can see is deterioration of the Czech universities, deterioration of the Czech science in the last 20 years. Missing the big names are missing. Big prizes are missing here. So you are the chance, so think about it.
Okay, I just have to, say something. So with Czech Pass, we also did our research, yeah. So we also, we have opinions, but we like to, have the numbers as well. Yeah, and so for the numbers, so we did this this questionnaire of how many of the Czech scientists who are abroad want to return and who wants to stay abroad. Yeah, and it's very many want to. So guess if it's more than 10% of Czech scientists who want to return. Do you think it's more or less? No, you're tired. So I won't. Yeah, it's 40% of Czech scientists who are abroad still want to return. 40%, that's a very big number. Yeah, I think in total we have a little, like 10,000, more than 10,000 scientists are abroad. Yeah, 40% of that, that's very many. Even on the senior level, there are still some scientists who want to return. So I don't see it as, as desperately. Yeah. So it might be a bit, yeah. So the numbers are more positive, more optimistic than it might appear from within.
Yeah, I would actually support it also that I am optimistic. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but for example, my partner is Austrian. He speaks no single word Czech because he's simply lazy to learn. And still we consider like Czech Republic as a perfect place where we want to raise kids and where we can create our centers of excellence. Of course, like when you look at the hard numbers, let's say how many like the most prestigious grants were given to the countries. Yes, there is a space for improvement, but I think that you can do like excellent science, and there are more and more opportunities to create your center of excellence, which hopefully can kind of trigger some bigger changes later. And one more thing I would like to add, I sometimes feel that the discussion is very black and white, like stay or leave, and like there would be some wall built on the border. And in Europe, where every 500 kilometers we have another state, right? I think that this distinction between Czech, Germany, Austria, Poland is losing a little bit meaning, right? Because we were working in Germany, living partly in Czech Republic and partly in Austria, and unless Corona closes the border, we were simply Central Europeans. We didn't even define ourselves as Czechs or Austrians or Germans. So, and there are even initiatives where you can have Czech-German funding, you can have Austrian-French funding, you can have whatever, you name it. So you don't need to make the choice, I want to be Czech, I want to be German, I want to be whatever, yeah.
I fully agree, yeah, but once again, some numbers, please. Tell me the best 10 universities in the world, where they are coming from, best 10, top 10 universities. I will help you. 8 from US and Oxford and Cambridge. Okay, then where is the another European university? ETH, Zurich, yeah? 30, 40. Best German universities, around 100. So once again, top 10, 8 in America, and Cambridge and Oxford is following. So Europe is definitely a nice place for living, but universities and science are not here. Support from in Europe is not as strong as would be. On the other hand, I should admit one point. The Max Planck Gesellschaft in Germany, so this is the institute having the largest number of Nobel Prizes in the world. So this is even more than the University of California. So Max Planck Gesellschaft in Germany. So there are some examples. Yeah.
Thank you for all answers. I think it's very interesting that we have several opinions and that we can discuss them, so thank you again. Now I would like to a little bit change the topic, but just a little bit. Dr. Reichlová, you have quite recently created your own research group. Should this be like an ultimate career goal for every young researcher?
Yeah, well, it's a natural development, I would say. At some point, it's the funny thing about science that you are considered young until your 40s. I always laugh that I would be retired in most of other professions. Yes, so at some point, this is a good step to become independent and to kind of manage your group in your way, how you want to do it, push topics which you consider interesting, but also being responsible, right, for getting your funding, getting good quality people, getting your results. So yes, I think it's a very natural development, yes, to kind of move the understanding of a topic that one becomes, one gets certain autonomy. Yeah. And yeah, by the way, the funding which I got, this is perfect example of the international cooperation, because this is funded by the Max Planck Society to the Czech Republic. So obviously this, yeah, I would not know if I should wear German or Czech t-shirt, right? I am paid by both of them, yeah.
I think that there are, it's a blessing and curse at the same time, building your own group, because the bigger group you have, the basically more science you can manage or do, the more successful scientist you are actually considered, but the less science you do yourself. And that's what is, for me, a very, very high price to pay for being a senior scientist and managing my own group. And I would also say it's not for everybody, and I'm not sure if it's for me, because you have to, it's not enough to be a good scientist. You have to be a good manager. You have to be good at what Helena said, getting funding, securing the instruments, and actually even managing the internal dynamics of the group. And being a good scientist does not mean automatically that you're a good manager. And I even say one of the best scientists I know, Václav Petříček from our group, he has actually not built his own group. He's been part of a department that was managed by others, but he was always a bit of a solitary player, and still he has done some amazing science in his life. So I don't share the opinion that building a large scientific group is the ultimate, or should be the ultimate goal of every scientist. But if you feel like that, if you have the drive, the managing skills, and the ideas to make a group of 10 or 15 or 20 people really work efficiently, then it's definitely the best way to get the science done.
So as the outsider of this group, let me say that the energy and drive and people skills that could lead you to be setting up your own science group could find very useful and lucrative application outside of science. For example, if you can put together a lab group, you could probably put together a company. And if you think eventually you could be a senior scientist putting together a lab group, I don't know if some of you are precocious and say, that's what I want to do. I want to be a Ph.D., then a postdoc, then a professor, and then have a lab group. Well, that energy and drive can also be useful very early on in your education and path through science in making startups. There's a great deal of money out there for people with intense energy and drive to try to solve a problem. And you don't have to stay in science to do it. I wanted to give this is not maybe a perfect example, but I had this with me for other travels that I'm doing. My team just put out a report. I say my team. I have an incredibly productive colleague who is a friend of mine from Cambridge, younger than me, And this is in my opinion, the best public opinion surveying. I would say scientific polling, but part of reviewing this work was realizing that it's valid polling or a good poll. The scientific pollsters do not like using the phrase scientific polling because it's not very scientific to say as much. And if you want to be scientific, you can't use that word. So this is very good polling on what different countries around the world think about nuclear energy, broken down by age, gender, education, all that sort of stuff. And I had the weird feeling of being involved in this great work by having the PDF sent to me. I did not think it up. I did not write it. I did not even design the cover, and I like designing things. What was my role? I found $100,000 to get it done. I knew some people that might like it. I went there. I pitched very hard over a long period of time. I put some of my own budget into doing a pilot study that we just paid for ourselves just to prove that we were capable of doing a big work. And then I turned an incredibly talented collaborator loose with a lot of money that was painful to see leaving our bank accounts, and we did that. So why am I saying this? Because I am incredibly proud of getting this done. I did not write the science. I did not do the polling. I did not think it up. You bet your ass I put my picture in it, and my name's in there, so I'm good. And but I did dig up the money. I did spend a crazy 10-hour straight-through night, old-school style, digging through millions of bits of data I was going to say by hand, but like massive Excel sheets where there's no substitute for the luck that comes from digging into the raw data from your experiments or your studies. I did that, and it was very joyful, and I sent a bunch of really mean questions to my colleague, and he had them all answered by morning, British time. And then we put it out, and I go around saying, yeah, I did this, and I don't feel bad at all. It was truly a team effort, even though I didn't use my own brain to think it up. I didn't do the writing. I did check all the words and make sure I liked the language, and I added some key advice, and then I have a much bigger Twitter presence, so I got it out there, and as soon as I get back from Prague, I'm meeting with the biggest private operator of nuclear plants in the whole world to go over this and see if they want to support it for next year. I would imagine that that feels something like what it feels like to have your own lab group, and just know that that same energy and drive, that desire for truth, can be useful outside of academia.
Thank you very much for answers. I will follow up that statement because, well, we've got universities, we've got some research institutes such as Czech Academy of Sciences, which are outside of the universities. Then we've got some commercial companies. What is the best place for scientific research? Is it even possible to say something like that?
So probably the answer is look around the world and try to find where is the best science. So once again, as a Max Planck Gesellschaft, if you check it by numbers of Nobel Prizes, but not only this one, and you can ask why. So first of all, there is a lot of enough money there. This is, of course, very important. But I believe that another point is that surprisingly, bureaucracy there, we are in Germany, is quite reasonable, I mean, not so high. And what is important, that senior scientists in Max Planck's, they are so-called directors, receive, if I compare it with Czech Academy of Science, enormous financial support for a long time. So when he became, or she became director, at the age of about 40, he received the support for next 25 years until he's going to retire. They are not applying for grants. In our country, at the Academy of Sciences at the university, each 3 years, we are spending enormous time applying for grant. Enormous time, almost half a year. Yeah? There are few grants for 5 years, but most of them only for 3 years. We are sitting at the table, and this is the bureaucracy, bureaucracy, and bureaucracy. We don't have support like in Max Planck. There are about 100 Max Planck Institute, and each one, this is comparable with the Academy of Sciences, but with completely different financial support. The senior scientist for 25 years, having a group 20, 30, or 40 people, he received the support for the whole group, excellent conditions, which is not here. So there's a way how to improve it. So this is, I believe, the best example, just very close from us, from Czech Republic, with excellent scientific results. So this is maybe one of the ways.
One of my favorite ongoing sagas to follow on Twitter is that a pack of rich people, mostly tech entrepreneurs, put a big cash bounty, a prize together for anyone who could use their coding skills and AI skills to translate almost completely destroyed papyrus or scrolls, paper scrolls from a villa near Pompeii, Italy. So we've had thousands of scrolls that we can't do anything with, we can't touch. If you touch them, they crumble. But we can start to scan them. And we've scanned them, but the data is a jumble of meaninglessness. So this project is a bunch of rich people putting in a cash bounty, and random people like you guys are solving it and getting chunks of money, 100,000 here, 200,000 there, as they solve chunks of this prize. This is a time-tested model that goes back hundreds of years. There have been famous contests that seem to cross the line between engineering, physics, science of various types, where people put on bounties and other people go for it. So here's another thing. Rich patrons, that is another way to cut through bureaucracy, and is why you should be lucky. How do you be lucky? You be good and loyal friend to a lot of different people while being smart, and things start happening for you. That's luck. This is another model that I think you shouldn't overlook. Companies, especially American companies, American tech companies, are extremely rich. If you want to do interesting work on real problems, that's one way to do it. You can switch to a new job for a new problem. People jump back and forth all the time, especially in an environment like Silicon Valley. So be ready for your science to be at its best, not necessarily within the rigid confines of the university. I think that more people might be happy jumping back and forth. I know that if I would to go back and finish my PhD, I would have a lot more perspective and a lot better idea of what a real problem was or wasn't, compared to when I was just an eternal student continuing on from student days. A lot of the most interesting work could be written up as PhDs, I'm sure, from, say, SpaceX. They are solving real design and material challenges that make what most students do in their engineering PhDs look really dumb and worthless. And sometimes these students are like, I feel like an imposter, and I want to pat them on the back and say, you kind of are, why don't you go get a job? And then you can come back and do your PhD when you know where the frontier of science and engineering actually sits in your discipline. I can't speak for physics or chemistry, but just in engineering, it's not great. It's pretty bad. Like, that was one of the things that I found at Cambridge. Engineering academia is pretty weird. It's not quite science, and it's not quite not. Anyway, so there's my advice. There are great riches to be had in many corners of the world for lucky, smart people who are good friends.
Yeah, maybe I can second this. Although we are, most of us are really scientists working in academia, you must keep in mind you can do a lot of science outside of academia. There are companies that have their research R&D departments, and there is really a lot going on. Like in SpaceX, I totally agree with you. There is a huge amount of great science done there. Or if you feel on the adventurous side, you can found your own startup, find investors, and do great science. And that just today I read an article about actually a Czech scientist who founded a startup to find a cure for Alzheimer. He seems to be quite successful. But then when we stick to the academia side of science, we have basically two types of institutions: universities and then research institutes, like the Institutes of the Czech Academy of Science, Max Planck, or the CNRS in France. And there, I think the important dividing line is that at the universities you get to teach. Sometimes you get a lot of teaching, sometimes more than you like. But many people find it, consider it very satisfying to teach. And it's a mission also to educate new students. And well, we wouldn't be where we are if we didn't have teachers to teach us. Again, if you have inclination to share experience, to teach, then probably university is something for you. If you are more on the nerdy side of, better doing the work and not being disturbed, then possibly you might be more inclined to the pure research institutes, although these two worlds, of course, are blending together. As a researcher, you can teach at the university. At the university, you can or should do a lot of science. But this is something that I'd say you should keep in mind. So both outside of academia, there is a lot of exciting science, and inside of academia, you have to balance the teaching and the research aspect of the work.
Thank you very much. I believe now is the best time to move to the second part. I think you have many questions, so I'll give the microphone to my colleague Peter. You can just raise your hand and he will come to you with the microphone. You can direct your question to one of our panelists or to all of them. It's up to you.
So the furthest, yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mark. You studied in Cambridge. Do you study for your bachelor's or your master's degree?
No, I was a student at Oklahoma State University, an unprestigious, not very highly ranked university in my home state, for aero and mechanical engineering and Russian language and literature. And then I studied for my master's, my M.Phil, Master in Philosophy, is the weird way that Oxford and Cambridge call that degree, in nuclear engineering. And then I continued on my Ph.D. for about a year and a half, depending on how you measure it, after that.
Okay, thank you.
Next question.
Thank you for the panel, first of all. I think it my question kind of applies to all education styles. I see a trend called liberal education. I think that's developing in European universities and which has already developed in US universities. So my question is, do you see, for studying science, do you see that studying other humanities or social sciences courses helping to your career as well? Thank you.
Well, considering I just said I studied Russian and engineering at the same time, yeah. I mean, one of the advantages for me of going to maybe a less competitive university is that I didn't have to work extremely hard in each class against the absolute smartest people in the world just to survive. I think I really appreciated this in the end because I studied many things. I was very curious. I did some architecture, followed math almost all the way to a second degree. I participated in the big collegiate math exams. I worked for my university newspaper. I ran track and field for my university, did music. I tried to do everything because I had no idea what I wanted to do. Science, engineering, law, medicine, I didn't know. And so I decided that I didn't have to know as long as I just studied everything. This is an extremely unusual system. I had a big scholarship at a cheap university in the US that helped me do this. I know it worked for me. I know I loved it. I know that a lot of my best connections around the world that turn into good science or good research have included fascinating conversations that have nothing to do with the topic at hand. They're just shared interests with say, a wealthy benefactor or a colleague who decides for whatever reason they loved having that conversation with me about music, and therefore they want to work with me. So I would say that a part of being lucky is energetically pursuing anything that interests you, as long as you get high enough grades to get into grad school. So that's what I would say.
If I could also say something. So I studied the nuclear physics faculty, but my job is chemistry. But what I would suggest, and we didn't do it, but it would be great to combine within the science, chemistry, physics, and biology. So baccalaureate in chemistry, masters in physics, and together with biology. So natural science is much broader, and I feel it. We are doing very frequently some exercise in DNA and so on, and I feel my drawback that our education in biology is not good enough. So combination of these three scientists could be strongly recommended. I know that it's not easy, but if you are really would like to do it, it would be possible.
I would, so thanks you for the question. It's an amazing question. It's really great that you think about it this way. I wish I had more humanities in my education. My education was very interdisciplinary. I studied biomedical engineering, so all of both, like a bit of both, a bit of all, yeah. Biology, medicine, we had 4 semesters anatomy classes, I don't remember much. Lots of physics, lots of math. And there's a catch to this multidisciplinarity, is that, like, by definition, you just can't go that deep in your subject. Yeah, and at the end of the day, when you want to do your research, you just need to get deep. Yeah, you really need to get down to what is unknown. Yeah, to be able to contribute. Yeah, so then my advice would be to just choose wisely the resources you have, and by resources I mean time. Yeah, and to really choose what you feel would be like most beneficial for you, but definitely, having perspectives from different fields is very, very beneficial and mind-opening.
I could maybe add one thing which was also mentioned a few times here. I mean, one should not forget that you are not alone. The scientific teams are typically not a single person doing research somewhere in a dark basement, right? They are teams. And it's important to stay in touch with people outside your own lab. It was mentioned here, the networking also from people from humanities or all other subjects and fields. I think it's important, instead of making fun, you are the whatever stupid economist, or I've heard that during my studies. So I think this is not the way to go. Yeah.
I would just very briefly add a little anecdote or fun. Well, those of you who speak German, you probably know the word Fachidiot. That's a beautiful German name, a word that I don't know if it has translation to other languages. Fach means subject, idiot, I guess, doesn't need translation. So that is a word for people who are very focused in their subject but know nothing else. And of course, it's pejorative. It's not what you should be, but at the same time, as Vladka said, that's what you have to be if you want to really understand some subject very, very deep. So I'd say you should try, or ideally, one should try to make their knowledge not a narrow hole, not a shallow, shallow hole. It should be a funnel. So you should start broad and then focus on one subject, but have a broad knowledge, and then building a team of other people whose funnels are slightly away from yours. That's the key to success. doesn't directly address the question of double education, but that's my feeling about it.
Maybe this doesn't need to be said, but let's be very clear, there is a hierarchy. Those who are subject idiots in the arts and humanities have very bad luck afterwards. It's devastating. Those who are subject idiots in math, science, engineering, you'll do okay, even though you could do more if you do other things. You will not force yourself to get an engineering education or a science education into modern standards outside of the university, and you absolutely can far exceed many university study levels just by staying in touch with interesting people on a, say, a humanities subject that you want to read, or staying really close up to the forefront of what's happening on internet forums or on Twitter even. There is a very big difference between getting those two degrees. Again, I don't think I need to say this, but I've met people as talented as you in high school at physics and who thought that there was some greater truth in, like, I don't know, history and philosophy of science or history of philosophy of engineering than actual engineering or science. No, you can add that other stuff later. You must actually do the work and get a proper science degree.
Next question.
Thank you. I have a question about working or researching or studying abroad, because for me it sounds really interesting, but it's also very scary at this age, because I think I'm maybe too young, but also at the right time for being in another country. So I wanted to ask you if you did, at what age did you go abroad?
So, yeah, thank you for the question. I think that actually the good thing is that you will go abroad, but you will be surrounded by people of your age, which will be in very similar situations. So you will help each other. There is like a load of administration stuff which will help you. I was leaving first time when I was in the second year of bachelor. So this is maybe like 2 years from where you are now, right?
I'm an American millennial from Oklahoma. I did not have a passport at all. I did not own a passport until I had graduated from high school. So that tells you something. Now, times are different. When I used to go off to summers in Russia, I would call in the airport on the way to Russia, I would call a bunch of the people I knew I probably wouldn't talk to for several months. And then if I had to talk to somebody in Russia, I would have to go buy weird plastic cards from the grocery store that I had to like get a coin and scratch off a number and then dial in like 20 digits and a bunch of weird noises, and then it was an expensive rate to call. So all of that to say, it's not clear what it means for all of you that you can instantly see people in HD, I'm sure in a year, 3D, at any point, anywhere, all the time. Is that as good as being next to your family if you can see them constantly? Is it somehow worse because there's almost in some ways no difference between being across the street and being across the ocean? I don't know. That's a very weird issue. But for some of you, it might make it easier to go overseas because you know you're fully connected. From others, it might be terrible that you can be super intensely connected digitally, but not there in life. And you'll have to work that out for yourselves. Good luck.
So I first went to the US when I was 17 for high school, for this high school year. I went to South Jersey. And so after 2020 elections, no, the one before, the first one when Trump won, yeah, 2016. the New York Times made a map of counties, how they voted, yeah, and I ended up with this like reddest county of New Jersey. Yeah, so I ended up, there was this exchange for families, and I ended up in a very conservative family. Yeah, they went to church. That was something that I didn't really know from my. So it was, you know, stepping out of a comfort zone, and it seemed scary at the beginning. But then, at the end of the day, I just learned that, you know, there are people like, you know, people are pretty much similar everywhere, and you just learn the things that you've got in common, and that it's actually, you know, not as difficult as it sounded or as it felt at the beginning. But the beginnings are tough, but then when you just, you know, overcome this, it makes you more confident to step out of this comfort zone and of these things that, you know, and to make maybe in your future a next step that might sound scary, but might turn out very beneficial. So my advice is to build a support network, to try to network within the place where you're going, not to end up alone. Yeah, and when you feel like you're alone and you're there and you're in a dark spot, just seek out help quickly. Yeah, that would be.
I'll just add something from my experience. I think you can always start just low-key. I mean, you don't need to go abroad for the whole bachelor's degree. You can travel for some conference or some internship or something. What can be, I don't know, 1 week or 2 weeks. You can travel just to the next country. That's often quite possible. And this may be easier not just because of that you may be scared, and it's normal to be scared of that, but it can be also easier because of the money. For me, it was not that easy to find money to study somewhere further abroad, so I decided I will go to Czech Republic because I'm from Slovakia, and for Slovak it's not that far away. It's still part of our home, but still it's 450 kilometers. It's like 5 hours by train, and quite soon enough I realized that I won't be traveling home every week or every 2 weeks because I won't be able to make it. So it was something like some small step which later helped me quite a lot to move further away. I think we can go for another question.
Thank you. My question has a bit of two parts. So I want to go back to the discussion about developing academia in Europe. And I wanted to ask, what do you think are the biggest hardships you faced to make it as a scientist that didn't happen for some of your colleagues in the US, for example? And the other part would be, how can we reverse this feedback loop of prestige and funding that keeps the US universities at the top? And is it worth it to do it, to make this effort, just to have the same minds work in a different geographical place?
I'll just mention something kind of funny in terms of breaking this feedback loop between prestige and funding. I was at a big conference put on by one of the very successful, famous VC investor funds in DC about 2 weeks ago. And Mark Cuban, a famous American investor who sold a company to Yahoo at very inflated value at the top of the tech bubble, the first one, 2000, and owns an NBA team. He has a television show where he has people come pitch companies and he makes an investment check on the show or not. It's called Shark Tank. Anyway, Mark Cuban is worth a few $1 billion, and he's up there on stage in front of all these really important CEOs and senators and just really important people in the US. And I don't know what somebody said, but then he looked out the audience and said, "Are any of you actually still hiring Harvard students? Why?" And he just sat there and ripped on Harvard for about 10 to 15 minutes. So on one hand, you could say, wow, the reputation of Harvard is really suffering with various cultural things that are happening in the US. On the other hand, It was Harvard in that discussion, wasn't it? It's almost impossible for anything to break that fame except to pursue science subdisciplines that don't require expensive experiments and just have to do, well, I mean, look, I know there's hard science and there's certain lab setups and costs that are unavoidable, but I'm telling you, a bunch of academia falls into these weird little crevices where you get an unusual new capability or power with computing, and suddenly you use it to crack a little edge through some data-based problem or some little bit of an area of science or engineering. You crack through with computational tools that are much more available than people would like previously have thought. So I would say that you might be the one to personally crack that prestige feedback loop, and if you do, I would bet that one of the first things you do is go to Harvard, or you yourself would probably go to Europe. That's my cynic's answer. I'll let the optimistic Czech scientists add.
Thank you for the question. So what my colleagues at Harvard, who started lab at Harvard or Cambridge, don't have that many problems with is attracting talent. So attracting good people, good students. Yeah, so that's just that's fact. Yeah, because even people from Asia or Africa, yeah, they just go for the prestige. And who would go for Prague when they don't know about Prague, or to Warsaw, or to somewhere, to the jungle? Yeah. So it's attracting talent. I don't think funding is that big of a problem, because I think there are very generous programs here for doing science and to get you what you need. And there's and for this infrastructure, you get to measure your samples somewhere through the collaboration. So I don't think this is like the biggest problem. I don't think it's the infrastructure or the money, but really the talent. And if it's worth, trying to breaking the cycle and making this, making the universities better in Europe as well, I think it's definitely important, because universities are, they carry the education, and you need to educate your population. We've got democracy, we just need to have people who are educated, who make educated decisions about their lives and about society. So I think it's our duty to just try to make it as good as we can. European Union is trying to do this within this widening, non-widening thing, that they just do positive stimuli to the countries where they are not as good. Yeah, so they send money in. Germany sends money in funds. Sends money to establish center of excellence, yeah, for research in the Czech Republic. So they are making competition for their scientists somewhere in a foreign country where so Europe is trying. I think this positive stimuli is the best thing we can do.
So I recently asked my colleague, professor at some universities, as well as students, and I asked, what is making the university so big? Of course, this is the question of investment and the money, but then the answer was, I have in my group 10, 15, 20 students, they all are motivated. And then I asked the same, my colleague at our university, and he mentioned, I have also 15 or 20 students in my group. Well, only one is motivated. So I'm spending a lot of time to convince the rest of the students that it's important to read and so on. So I believe that the difference is, and this is again connected with the name of the university, of the name of the advisor, that there all the students are motivated. They are working the day and night, and the group is making much is going forward much faster than here, because you can find, yes, I have 1 or 2 or 3, but definitely not 15. And of course, you should follow, you should make you teach all of them, not only the best 1 or 2. And this is probably advantage, or big advantage of the big universities, that the students are motivated there. Probably this is the key for success.
So thank you very much for all your questions. I think we will have some more time for some individual questions, because our panelists will stay here for a little more time, but I think it will be the best to now conclude the official part of the panel discussion. Well, we prepared some small commemorative presents for you. We are extremely grateful that you found some time for us to come here and to talk about very important topics. So I would like to thank you again. That was Professor Pavel Hobza. Mr. Mark Nelson. Dr. Vladimíra Petráková. Dr. Lukáš Palatinus. And Dr. Helena Reichlová. So thank you again very much. And just one last thing to say. I wish you all the luck you can get, not only for your future career, but also for tomorrow for the Fyziklani competition. So good luck, and you can still stay here and talk with our panelists, and then good night and see you tomorrow.